Now, our planet has gone through 5 mass extinctions. One of them was so bad, it wiped out over 95% of life forms on our planet. Scientists think they might have found the culprit – volcanoes. Scientists took some ancient rocks from a dozen global locations and found elevated levels of mercury, which was released by volcanoes millions of years ago. This points to volcanic eruptions as the probable cause of the Permian-Triassic extinction event. The mercury didn't just come from rocks, it was from the atmosphere. This means that when the volcanoes erupted, they released this poisonous gas into the air. They produced about 720,000 cubic miles of ash, vastly more than the infamous eruption of Mount St. Helens. The gas left a trace that marks one of history's most significant catastrophes, setting the stage for the age of dinosaurs. These eruptions most likely released mercury by igniting large coal deposits. Shallower waters showed mercury spikes right at the extinction's main horizon, while deeper sections recorded spikes tens of thousands of years earlier. This could mean that the effects of the volcanic activity and the extinction it triggered varied across different ocean depths. That means that the extinction was prolonged and complex. It not only caused significant climate warming at the time, but also led to some other toxic events, like acid rain, which made the situation even worse for plants and animals. Although few things have made it from the Permian period to the present day, we can get an idea of what the world was like back then from the fossils found in eastern Kansas. Now, 252 million years ago, the Earth was thriving. The Earth's continents were coming together to form the supercontinent Pangaea. The land was mostly dry, and the Earth looked like a harsh, arid desert, vast stretches of land with minimal water sources. The climate varied from scorching summers to frigid winters. There were some plants here and there, mostly conifers, large ferns, and primitive mosses in places with more water. The Earth was dominated by dinosaur-like creatures like pelycosaurs or therapsids, often called mammal-like reptiles. There was also the fierce Dimetrodon with its awesome snail-like spine. These three were the top predators of their time. Smaller reptiles and amphibians also populated the landscape, alongside burgeoning insects like beetles and dragonflies, which thrived during that dry time. But all the interesting stuff mostly happened in shallow tropical seas. Marine environments were bustling with life: rich coral reefs, shellfish called brachiopods, animals known as bryozoans, and large single-cell fusilinids, which kind of look like they're covered in moss. Small funny ammonoids were quite popular as well, often hanging out in the oceans alongside brachiopods, bony fish, and sharks. Creepy trilobites, ancient marine creatures that first appeared 500 million years ago in the Cambrian period, but then persisted up to the Permian period. Trilobites were very diverse, active predators to scavengers or plankton eaters. However, almost all these beautiful creatures were about to disappear during the Permian-Triassic extinction. Now, this extinction was truly ruthless. More than 2/3 of amphibian and reptile species disappeared, and nearly 1/3 of all insect species were wiped out. Usually, the insects are resilient survivors, which shows how catastrophic this event was. Among these extinct animals was the terrifying Meganeuropsis, a giant dragonfly with a wingspan of nearly 2.5 feet, once found in central Kansas near Elmo. This place is famous for its rich collection of Permian insect fossils, including ancient crickets and cockroaches. For a while, it was a mystery what exactly happened. Theories range from a massive asteroid strike and natural pollutants choking the oceans of oxygen, to dust clouds, to cosmic volcanic eruptions blocking the sun and cooling the planet. There was evidence for each of these scenarios, but the recent discovery points to the volcanoes theory after all. There's also a possibility that the reason wasn't just the volcanoes. NASA-funded researchers have recently uncovered what might be the fingerprints of this ancient perpetrator, or at least one of its accomplices. By investigating rocks around the globe, they've found evidence pointing to a massive asteroid strike as a possible culprit. They found unusual molecules shaped like soccer balls, known as fullerenes. These molecules contain rare gases that usually come from space. This suggests that an enormous space rock, perhaps as large as Mount Everest, crashed into the Earth, contributing to extinction. There seems like there might have been a series of catastrophic events. The volcanoes were spewing vast quantities of lava and gas that altered the climate, Pangaea was forming and disrupting weather and ocean patterns, and an asteroid decided to join in as the cherry on top. Lucky for us, nature is super persistent and always finds its way to be reborn. This just proves how resilient the Earth is. Now, what's interesting is this wasn't the only time that happened. The Late Devonian extinction, which happened around 360 million years ago, is also tied to volcanic activity. Volcanic eruptions and the proliferation of land plants could have altered the nutrients flowing into the oceans. The Triassic-Jurassic extinction, which happened around 200 million years ago, a bit before the dinosaurs, might have also been a result of a volcanoes plus asteroid impact combo. And finally, about 66 million years ago, the last dramatic shift happened on Earth. Our planet went from the age of dinosaurs to the age of mammals. This momentous change is known as the KPG extinction. Just like the Permian extinction, it was a sudden event that ushered in new forms of life. And, once again, there are two major theories about what happened. The most popular theory tells us that the dinosaurs disappeared because of a massive asteroid. The Chicxulub meteorite smashed into present-day southern Mexico, creating the Chicxulub crater. The meteor was about 6 miles wide and hurtling towards Earth at incredible speeds. The impact was so powerful that it vaporized everything nearby instantly and released more energy than any other event in a billion years. The aftermath was catastrophic. Earthquakes shook the continents, and the ground itself heaved like a stormy sea. As the dust thrown up by the asteroid settled, it fell back to Earth like rain, heating up the atmosphere so much that forests worldwide burst into flames. Not far behind was a gigantic tsunami, stirred up by the ocean floor's upheaval, which swamped coastlines near the Gulf of Mexico. Not all dinosaurs perished immediately. In places like New Zealand, some dinosaur populations survived initially. However, a dark, ash-filled sky eventually covered the globe, blocking out the sun and plunging the world into cold and darkness. The long-term effect of the asteroid is what really sealed the fate for dinosaurs. Without sunlight, the food chain collapsed rapidly. Herbivores slowly disappeared, followed by the carnivores that depended on them, and the ash settling back to the Earth exacerbated the environmental upheaval, with fluctuating temperatures making survival tough. But there's another theory that says that, like with the Permian extinction, the asteroid was just the cherry on top. The dinosaur extinction was inevitable because of the volcanoes. Around 1 million years before the dinosaurs' demise, massive volcanic activity began under where India is today. This event created the Deccan Traps, a vast plateau formed from layers of lava that covered an area as large as France. For hundreds of thousands of years, these volcanoes spewed sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This turned the skies dark and the rain acidic, poisoning food sources and turning oceans into toxic baths. These changes were gradual but relentless, stressing ecosystems, breaking food chains, and leading to a slow but steady decline in many species, including the dinosaurs. Although it's not certain which theory is true, scientists now think that both were equally to blame. Maybe one day we'll have a clear picture of how the reign of the dinosaurs came to such an abrupt end.
Are you ready to dive into the most dangerous waters on the planet? Just kidding. Please put your swimming gear back on the shelf, and trust me, it's much safer to look at them from a distance. Some of them are full of sharks, and others full of acid, and I don't even know what's worse. Probably the ones that are so deep and scary that many divers never come back for them. I'll let you choose your own top worst. If you've ever been to Texas in the summer, you know how hot it gets, and you'll be happy to jump into some ice-cold water without thinking too much. Brightly colored and a bit out of this world, Jacob's Well looks like the perfect place for that. Settlers first found it around the middle of the 19th century. They noticed a watering hole spouting water up to 5 feet and decided it would be a good drinking fountain. The well is 120 feet deep on average, and they believe it's the second largest fully submerged cave in Texas. So this well with the cool water lures in some brave folks who jump in from an outcropping nearby. I guess I'd skip on that one. What about you? Some divers go down a whole 100 feet and maneuver around the passages of the underwater cave. And they all say it's not a walk in the park. Several folks never come back from the well, and that's why they say it's one of the most dangerous diving spots in the world. All those underwater passageways become so narrow at one point that you can get stuck there with all the equipment. The second problem is that the cave is really deep, and it's dangerous even on the surface. It's only 12 feet in diameter and has rocks around it, so you can hurt yourself while flipping into it. And if all this wasn't convincing enough and you still want to go, you'll need special permission to do it. Now, Hanakapiage Beach in Hawaii is exactly what comes to mind when someone says perfect beach, so I know you'll be tempted to go there. But in reality, it deserves to be listed in the dictionary under danger. If you still go there, you'll notice a wooden tally board showing the number of swimmers who never got out of the water. You'll see more than 80 marks, and it's an unofficial number, so there could be more. The source of danger here is extra strong rip currents and totally unpredictable high surf. There are no big reefs in the ocean in that area, so nothing stands in the way of strong currents. If you're feeling adventurous and still decide to go in the water and end up caught in a rip current, the nearest safe shore is around 6 miles away, so the chances of surviving are really low. Plus, the beach is so remote, there are no lifeguards around, so it'll just be you against the ocean, and the ocean has more chances of winning. That's why Hanakapiage isn't even fit for experienced swimmers and surfers. There is definitely no shortage of beaches in Hawaii, so you can choose something else for your getaway. Guri, or Fraser Island, if Guri also seems impossibly hard to pronounce for you, is teeming with diverse wildlife and stunning landscapes. But before you head off to this largest sand island in the world, let's talk safety. Dingoes roam the island, and they aren't your average golden retrievers from the neighborhood. These guys can be unpredictable and dangerous to humans if you provoke them. So you should never feed them or interact with them, and keep your food and other stuff on you if you don't want to draw their attention. And trust me, you don't. The next threat is snakes hiding in tall grass. Visitors must stick to marked trails and watch out, especially at night. There are also some super venomous spiders around, and if you think you can hide from all that fauna in the water, surprise, surprise, great white and bull sharks will be waiting for you there. You can meet them if you go any deeper in the water than up to your knees. Plus, the currents are pretty strong here, and the ocean conditions can change quickly or seem calmer than they actually are. There are no lifeguards ready to save your life in case something goes wrong, so you're swimming at your own risk. And if you think you can just call for help using your phone, I wouldn't rely too much on getting good coverage here. The weather on the shore here also changes with no warning and brings sudden rainstorms, strong winds, and temperature ups and downs. Our next destination today is the Blue Lagoon. But don't get your hopes up, we aren't going to that gorgeous spa in Iceland, but to this UK version. Swimming here is like bathing in bleach. Not your favorite pastime? Mine neither. Authorities keep issuing warnings not to swim there. They call the once limestone quarry in Harper Hill probably the most dangerous water in the country. Those tropical-looking blue waters have high alkaline pH levels from limestone leaching. But it doesn't stop thousands of people from coming here during hot weather. Your skin, eyes, and stomach won't thank you for a visit here. You might also experience cold water shock or bump into one of the many objects that have been dumped in there over the years, from car wrecks to basic rubbish. In March of 2020, the situation got so bad that they even dyed the water of the Blue Lagoon black to deter prospective swimmers. In August of 2014, some locals found a lake in the middle of the desert in Tunisia. It gets really hot there, so I'm sure you'd also want to jump in there immediately. The new body of water got the nickname Mysterious Lake and actually became a great mystery. I hope you appreciate the pun. Hundreds of people came here to swim in the clear, cool water, but a few days later, the lake turned dark green. The locals didn't care about this and continued to bathe in it anyway. When scientists and geologists arrived at the place, they announced that the lake was stagnating. It didn't refresh itself from underground streams, and the rains didn't feed it either. That's how the water became moldy and dirty. The lake had some algae and a lot of harmful bacteria that are dangerous to the human body. Scientists also found out that the land in this region had phosphate deposits. This substance can decay, but even that didn't stop people from bathing in the lake in the middle of the desert. Where it came from is still a mystery. Some experts think that heavy rains have filled a hole in the ground with water. Another, more popular theory says that an earthquake had formed a lake. The seismic activity must have torn the Earth's crust above the water table, and then underground springs had filled the crevice. In theory, the lake could drain back out one day just as suddenly as it had appeared. So, hurry up if you want to see it. Have you ever bathed in a diamond mine? I guess you're better off not trying it, especially if we're talking about the Big Hole in Kimberley, South Africa. 150 years ago, there was a flat-topped hill there. Then the news spread that someone had found big diamonds in the area. Thousands of people with picks and shovels rushed to the area. It became the largest hand-dug excavation in the world and one of the deepest. The mine was growing and water seeped into the pit and the rock from the walls moved down the slopes. They had switched to underground mining with tunnels and shafts. It became way too expensive, so they decided to shut down the mine after finding around 6,000 pounds of diamonds there. Now, the former mine is filled with roughly 130 feet of water. Swimming here is really dangerous because you can't see the bottom and the walls of this lake are too steep. So I guess you're better off taking your diamond rush elsewhere. Glamorous lifestyle, posh cars, and all those Dolce Vita attributes are tightly associated with Hollywood. But no matter how luxurious this star lifestyle may sound, there's always the flip side of the coin. The secrets the movie industry hides can sometimes be blood-curdling. But I can expose the darkest sides of showbiz for you. The picture's up. Tom Cruise has an ace up his, not exactly sleeve, that helps him nail those jaw-dropping stunts without needing a stunt double. Turns out, it's all thanks to his trusty G-string thong. Tom Cruise rocks a saucy thong to stay flexible and unrestricted as he takes on baddies, leaps out of planes, and does all those crazy action sequences. Hey, if it works for him, more power to him. At the end of his career, Marlon Brando definitely took a laid-back approach to memorizing his lines. He was known to sneak a peek at cue cards hidden around the set, like when he had his lines scribbled on the back of baby Superman's diaper. And in The Godfather, he taped his lines to other actors' chests and maybe even used a sneaky cat to hide a cue card during a memorable scene. Urgent bathroom breaks can seriously mess up anyone's plans. They can be especially uncomfortable if you're an actor that has to perform stunts. Ask Harrison Ford about it. He had a health condition while filming Raiders of the Lost Ark. Because of constant powder room trips, he couldn't shoot a big sword fight scene. It would take way too much time without breaks. Instead, we got that awesome moment where Indy just shoots the swordsman. The Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz was wearing an actual lion pelt. That costume was no joke. It was so heavy and uncomfortable, poor guy. The Wicked Witch of the West wasn't just wearing any old makeup, she was slathering on some green, copper-based makeup that was seriously toxic. Once her makeup was applied, Margaret Hamilton couldn't even eat. All she could do was drink something using a straw. The director of The Exorcist, William Friedkin, was all about getting real reactions from his cast. He'd pull out a shotgun and fire off blanks out of nowhere, scaring the pants off his actors. He just wanted to see genuine fear. That's a dedication to making a creepy film, right? Those bees in Candyman were the real deal. Poor Tony Todd had to deal with them buzzing around during scenes where they came pouring out of his mouth. To film this creepy scene, they used 500 bees to fill his mouth. Those were 12-day-old bees, so their stingers weren't as powerful. Plus, Tony was covered in special pheromones, so the bees thought he was their queen bee. Even with all that protection, he got stung 23 times, but he received an extra grand for each sting. In the movie Casablanca, they used forced perspective for the iconic airport scene, but it wasn't filmed outside as it may seem. There was no way they could fit in a real plane indoors. So they created a small plywood plane model and hired little people as extras to make it look full-sized. With the help of fog and soft focus, the illusion was complete. Humphrey Bogart rocked some serious lifts in his shoes to stand taller than Ingrid Bergman in Casablanca. He was a bit insecure about his height because Bergman was an inch taller than him. You may think it's not a big deal, but Bergman would wear heels in the movie, and she was towering over him in some scenes. So Bogart had to wear these massive platform shoes just to compete. Isla Fisher had a close call while shooting a stunt for Now You See Me. She was stuck in a water tank while chained up and almost drowned. There was supposed to be an emergency switch to drain the tank, but she couldn't reach it because she got tangled in the chains. And to top it off, nobody realized she was in actual danger because they thought she was just acting. Thankfully, she was able to free herself and finally activate the switch in the nick of time. The Blair Witch Project marketing team went all out to trick people into thinking it was a real documentary. Found footage movies are fictional, but they pretend to be real documentaries shot by the characters. The Blair Witch Project was one of the first of its kind. It's about 3 students trying to make a documentary about a witch in Maryland. Things get crazy in the woods, and by the end of the movie, they vanish, leaving only their footage behind. The marketing campaign got so intense with fake reports and posters that some people actually thought the actors had disappeared for real. Filmmakers always have to get creative when showing vehicles and devices that don't actually exist. Take, for instance, all the funky props in Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. I mean, some explosions in the movie looked just like those old-school Echo mics we used to play with as kids. The prop specialist just used the upper part of the toy and spray-painted it to get a natural-looking result. Michael Keaton's Batman outfit in Batman Returns was rocking some seriously cool kicks. The boots were actually modified Nike Jordan 6s, painted black and decked out with shin armor. And get this, they kept the original sole with the Jumpman logo. Did you know that Janet Leigh, the actress who played Marion Crane in Psycho, was so spooked by her character's shower scene that she avoided showers at all costs? Yep, she only took baths after that. If she really had to shower, she had to make sure every possible exit was sealed and kept a close watch on the door the entire time. Can you blame her? That scene was intense. So get this. In Titanic, Jack totally goofed and told Rose to chill on the bed instead of the couch while he was sketching her. Turns out, Leonardo DiCaprio slipped up and just went with it. Director James Cameron thought it was hilarious and kept it in the final cut. Classic Leo. Henry Cavill's filming for Justice League and Mission Impossible 6 clashed, and Paramount straight up banned him from shaving his epic mustache. Warner Brothers had to drop a cool $25 million to CGI that stash out of the movie. Can you imagine the special effects team freaking out over that? In the 2002 Spider-Man movie, it took a whopping 156 tries to nail a seemingly innocent scene. Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker comes to the rescue of Mary Jane after she takes a tumble in the school cafeteria. Her lunch goes flying, but Spider-Man swoops in, saves the day, and catches everything on her tray. And get this, no CGI was used at all. It was all Maguire making the magic happen. Kirsten Dunst confirmed that there were no tricks, just Maguire's impressive skills, and maybe a little help from a tray glued to his hand. When Alan Rickman took that epic fall from Nakatomi Plaza in Die Hard, he was totally duped by the stunt coordinator. Picture this. Hans is dropped from the tippy top of Nakatomi, actually the Fox building in Century City, California. Rickman actually did the stunt himself, but here's where it gets juicy. He was basically pranked. The stunt coordinator held him with a rope and said he'd be released on 3, but pulled a sneaky move and let him go on 1 instead. So that look of fear on Hans's face was totally legit. Rickman was shook, just like Hal Pacherny wanted. Rickman even admitted that he didn't remember the countdown, but he had definitely felt the adrenaline rush from doing the stunt. Jim Carrey wasn't just acting as the Grinch. That guy was literally transformed into a walking, talking sourpuss with all that makeup and prosthetics. It was so intense on set that even the special effects makeup artist had to seek for specialized help after working with him. Now that's method acting. Roll credits.
The largest volcanic region on Earth is not in Africa or Japan, but under the ice of Antarctica. Scientists found 138 volcanoes in its western part, and if they decide to go wild, you'll surely notice it. They could melt huge amounts of ice that will move into the ocean, raise its level, and make our planet uninhabitable for humans. But before you pack your things to fly away to another planet, hear me out. Only 2 of the Antarctic volcanoes are officially classified as active now, and it would take a whole series of eruptions, decade after decade, to seriously impact the whole world. Mount Erebus, one of the 2 Antarctic volcanoes currently in action, proudly bears the title of the world's southernmost active one. It has been continuously erupting since at least 1972. It emits plumes of gas and steam and sometimes even spews out rocks, and scientists call it strombolian eruptions. One of the coolest features is a lava lake in one of its summit craters, with molten material on the surface. Such lakes are rather rare because they need certain conditions to make sure the surface never freezes over. The second active volcano is Deception Island, a horseshoe-shaped landmass. It is the caldera of an active volcano that last erupted over 50 years ago. Scientists who monitor it say it shouldn't go wild anytime soon. Antarctica also has plenty of fumaroles. Those are volcanic vents that release gases and vapors into the air. In the right conditions, they can spew out enough stuff to build fumarolic ice towers up to 10 feet tall. Scientists keep an eye on the Antarctic volcanoes with seismometers that detect when the Earth starts trembling from volcanic activity. Sometimes they also use more complicated tech, but it's all really challenging because of how far away this polar region is and how tricky it is to get there. That's why no one can predict when one of the continent's volcanoes that are now sleeping might erupt. We can guess what this waking up would look like if we analyze the events from nearly 20,000 years ago. So, shall we? One of Antarctica's sleeping volcanoes, Mount Takahe, had a series of eruptions and spewed out a good amount of halogens rich in ozone back then. Some scientists say these events warmed up the southern hemisphere. Glaciers started to melt and help finish the last ice age. For these events to repeat, we'd need a series of eruptions with substances rich in halogens from one or more volcanoes that are now above the ice. It's an unlikely scenario, but since it already happened in the past, it's not completely impossible. As for volcanoes hiding under a thick layer of ice, it looks like their gases would hardly make it to the atmosphere, but they would be strong enough to melt huge caverns in the base of the ice and produce a serious amount of meltwater. The West Antarctic ice sheet is wet and not frozen to its bed, so this meltwater would work as a lubricant and set the overlying ice into motion soon. The volume of water that even a large volcano would generate in this way is nothing compared to the volume of ice beneath it. So a single eruption wouldn't make a difference, but several volcanoes erupting close to or beneath any of the western Antarctica's big ice streams would. Those ice streams are rivers of ice that take most of the frozen water in Antarctica into the ocean. If they change their speed and bring unusual amounts of water into the ocean, its level will rise. As the ice would get thinner and thinner, there would be more and more new eruptions. Scientists call it a runaway effect. Something like that happened in Iceland. The number of volcanic eruptions went up when glaciers started to recede at the end of the last ice age. So it looks like, for massive changes, several powerful volcanoes above the ice with gases full of halogens need to get active within a few decades of each other and stay strong over many tens to hundreds of years. Antarctica stores around 80% of all the fresh water in the world, and if they melted all of it, global sea levels would rise by almost 200 feet. And then we'd have to look for a new planet to live on. But this again is an unlikely scenario. It's more likely that the eruptions under the ice will lubricate ice streams and seep water into the ocean, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. A super strong, super angry supervolcano could do it though, and it has already happened in the past. Over 200 million years ago, the world went through a major makeover with not one, not two, but 4 massive volcanic eruptions in huge pulses. The supervolcano called Camp had been erupting over and over for 600,000 years. It all happened in Wrangell, a large chunk of land that used to be a supermassive volcano stretching across what's now British Columbia and Alaska. And it wasn't the lava or the volcanic ash that ruined the environment. The eruption made carbon levels skyrocket. The planet would never be the same again. This volcanic activity might have helped dinosaurs grow from cat-sized critters into giants we saw in Jurassic Park. It kicked off a 2-million-year rainy season. It made the whole world hot and humid, and the dinos just loved it. Researchers dug deep into sediment layers beneath an ancient lake in Asia to uncover these secrets. They found traces of volcanic ash and mercury, clear signs of those epic eruptions. There were carbon signatures showing huge spikes in carbon dioxide levels. It made the atmosphere toasty, and the rain poured down. So the bad news is, another eruption like this could happen. The supervolcano beneath Yellowstone National Park has been sleeping for nearly 70,000 years. But if it wakes up, it would be many times more catastrophic than the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980. It's considered the most disastrous volcanic eruption in U.S. history. It followed 2 months of earthquakes and injection of magma below the volcano that weakened and destroyed the entire north face of the mountain. The eruption column went 80,000 feet into the atmosphere and spread ash over 11 U.S. states and several Canadian provinces. The last Yellowstone eruption was 1,000 times greater than that. The ground above Yellowstone sits on a hot spot made of molten and semi-molten rock called magma. This magma stuff flows into a chamber beneath the park, about 4 to 6 miles down, making the ground puff up like a balloon. But then, as it cools down, the ground goes back to its usual state. Volcano watchers have been keeping an eye on this for a century. They noticed the ground lift up about 10 inches around 20 years ago, but since 2010, it's been going back down. The experts say we have no big eruptions on the horizon, so doomsday isn't coming anytime soon. But there's some underground activity going on lately which keeps us interested. Since humans haven't been around to witness every little thing Yellowstone does, it's kind of tough to say for sure what's brewing down there. Yellowstone has had some epic eruptions within the last couple million years. They happen like clockwork, with gaps of 600,000 to 800,000 years between them. The last big one was around 640,000 years ago, and it basically reshaped the entire landscape, spreading ash and debris as far as Louisiana. You can still see the aftermath of the last big eruption in the Yellowstone caldera today. Experts say a massive eruption like the last one is an unlikely scenario. We're more likely to see eruptions of steam and hot water or lava flows. When and with what force it will wake up remains a mystery to scientists. So, theoretically, humans can survive an asteroid that has the potential to destroy entire planets. It won't be a walk in the park, though. Let's go back in time to 66 million years ago, in the late Cretaceous period. The Earth, before humans, where dinosaurs are thriving. The plants and animals are rich and diverse. You'd see a T-Rex chasing a Triceratops, or the massive Alamosaurus, one of the biggest animals to ever roam the planet, towering over the landscape. In Texas, they remember the Alamosaurus. And watch out for the Ankylosaurus, a living tank swinging its tail like a wrecking ball at any threat. As you're about to enjoy a quiet evening under the stars, a bright new light appears in the sky of the northern hemisphere. Now, a new star in the sky doesn't really stand out at first. It's just twinkling like the rest. But give it a few hours, and you'll notice it's getting brighter. Check again the next night, and boom, it's the brightest thing in the sky, outshining planets and even the moon. Then finally, it horrifyingly outshines the sun. The star was the Chicxulub asteroid, which left a gigantic crater now called Chicxulub Crater in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. The asteroid enters the Earth's atmosphere at a blistering 12.5 miles per second. It blasts through 60 miles of the atmosphere in about 3 seconds. It falls so fast that even the air can't get out of its way. The air gets squashed and heats up to thousands of degrees in a blink. Before the asteroid even touches the ground, this super-hot air has already vaporized much of the sea where it's about to strike, near the Yucatan Peninsula. Then, in a flash, the asteroid smashes into the Earth, screaming over Central America with a loud boom that echoes everywhere. It doesn't just smash the ground, it makes the soil and rock flow like liquid. The asteroid digs a hole so wide and deep that it nearly touches Earth's inner layers and throws up dirt more than 20 miles high. At that exact moment of impact, the asteroid also turns its massive speed and weight into heat in a split second. It puts so much energy into the Earth that it makes molecules move faster than the surface of the Sun. This massive energy created a giant ball of plasma, superhot charged gas that includes bits of vaporized rock. This all shot out at incredible speeds. The shockwave from the impact and the heat turned the Earth around the crash site into gas instantly. This set off earthquakes all around the world. And it's not just the rocks flying around that you need to worry about. As they plummet through the sky, they rub against the air, heating up so much that they set fires all around the world. The heat they give off could be compared to an oven cranked up to its highest setting. This fiery shower causes most of the world's trees to burn down. The entire world is now on fire. Soon it changes everything. In a blink, dinosaurs were wiped out, making way for mammals to rise. And not only dinosaurs, 75% of species and big creatures disappeared, leaving behind only some small birds and critters. So, how could you, a human, survive something like that? Now, some animals made it back then. To survive, we need to learn from their resilience. The only birds that survive even in the toughest conditions are the ones nesting safely on the ground. Among the few larger animals that manage to dodge extinction, all have ways to deal with the heat. Some, like certain small mammals, snakes, and lizards, can dig themselves into cooler underground burrows. Others, like crocodiles and turtles, just hide in the water. So, if you're exactly on the other side of the planet when the strike happens, and you act super fast, you might just make it. Right now, the impact is about 10,000 miles away, but don't underestimate its power. As soon as you hear the loud boom, head underground as quickly as you can. And be careful, because you'll feel the Earth shake about 30 minutes later. Hide in a deep cave, preferably with a narrow entrance. It would protect you from the falling debris, and the temperatures underground would be stable. Also, some caves have natural water sources, rivers or streams. You might also prepare for the not-so-great diet of insects, fungi, or poor small animals that also seek refuge in the cave system. But it's better than nothing. You also need to be extremely far away from any large bodies of water. Being near the ocean might seem like a safe bet during a massive asteroid impact because the sea can buffer extreme temperature changes. But the earthquakes trigger terrifying tsunamis, even in lakes or fjords. The asteroid's crash sets off not just one tsunami, but many, and they're as tall as skyscrapers. Within an hour, colossal waves between 600 and 1,000 feet high hit the Gulf Coast, slamming into places like Mexico and the southern United States, and flooding miles inland. These waves are so powerful, they even push rivers backward. These tsunamis continue around coastlines, reaching the east coast of the United States, and 6 hours later, they hit Europe, Africa, and the Mediterranean. By 15 hours after the impact, there isn't a coastline on Earth that hasn't felt the wrath of these waves. Well, let's say you survived the initial impact somewhere deep underground, but your troubles have only begun. The Chicxulub asteroid strikes a region loaded with sulfur. This sends 100 billion tons of sulfur and an enormous amount of water into the sky. The water vapor forms massive storm clouds. They start to rain acid. In colder places, huge snowstorms bury the land under feet of snow each day. The impact also vaporizes massive amounts of oil, throwing up 150 football stadiums worth of it into the air. This oil turns into a thick black soot in the stratosphere. It coats the Earth like black paint. And even when the acid rain calms down, This carbon stays up above the clouds and doesn't wash away. This sooty layer blocks out 90% of sunlight, plunging the Earth into a cold darkness that lasts for at least 3 years. The world cools down by about 50 degrees on average. Now, when you finally leave your deep cave, you must look for places where you won't freeze. The only spots spared from the frost are tropical islands like Madagascar, India, which was an island back then, and Indonesia. These places have surviving plants and animals, and they even continue to get fresh water, unlike most of the world. Everything else in the world looks like a huge nuclear wasteland. These tropical islands are safe spots during an asteroid apocalypse, but don't think of them as paradise. These places still only get about 10% of their usual sunlight and barely enough rain to avoid turning into deserts. In this chilly, gloomy setting, most food chains fall apart. If you want to survive, you'll need to bring lots of extra food with you, for the next 6 years at least. Now, some things are lucky enough to survive. Fossils tell us that freshwater ecosystems did well, so staying close to a river or estuary might be your best shot at finding food. You could come across turtles, crocodiles, and some fish. Animals like clams, snails, and small crustaceans that live in the sediment also manage to hang on. And while a bit warmer than everything else, these places are no walk in the park. You'd need to pack warm clothes to have any chance of survival. Now, if we add all this together, the best spot for surviving the Chicxulub asteroid would be Indonesia. It's a mountainous, tropical country that consists of several islands. There, you'll find bearable temperatures, a bit of rainwater, and a deep cave for shelter. This could protect you from the falling tektites, the intense heat, and even help you find something to eat in the rivers and lakes. But if you stumble upon any shrew-like creatures while scavenging for food, time traveler, please let them be. It's not clear how many survived the Chicxulub impact, and eating one could have unforeseen effects on the future of humanity. Like, don't eat your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, right? Welcome to Rapa Nui, better known as Easter Island. It's a tiny speck in the vast Pacific Ocean, 2,200 miles away from the coast of Chile. This island is most famous for its eerie moai statues. This place is also home to one of the most mysterious writing systems in the world, called Ronga Ronga. We found it on 27 small wooden tablets. For years, historians have been arguing about the true history of these tablets, and now we might have found the truth. Humans first set foot on this island in the 12th century. For many years, it was home to the Rapa Nui people. They were pretty isolated out there in the Pacific Ocean until Europeans arrived in the 1720s. Europeans brought with them lots of troubles, leaving only a small fraction of the native population alive. Later in the 19th century, a missionary, Eugene Iro, went to the island and discovered the wooden tablets with intricate symbols carved on them. He wrote how marvelous they are, but there are hundreds of them on the island, and that they can be found in every household. But unfortunately, not all of them survive to this day. We've only got 27 of them. Some of them were heavily weathered, burned, or otherwise damaged, and now they're scattered all over the world in museums and private collections. Some of the language's artifacts were carted off to Tahiti and then to Europe by Europeans, leaving none behind on Easter Island itself. The 4 sacred tablets found their home in a congregation in Rome. They were the ones used in the recent discovery. For years, historians have been arguing whether this writing system was made up by the islanders themselves or they borrowed it from Europeans. To find the truth, they decided to use a technique called radiocarbon dating. All organic materials like wood, charcoal, and so on contain a tiny amount of a radioactive form of carbon called carbon-14. When life comes to an end, things stop taking in carbon-14, and the amount they had starts to decay over time. By measuring how much carbon-14 is left in a sample, we can assume how old this sample is. This is how we learn the age of many fossils and artifacts. So, they looked at the age of some Ronga Ronga tablets. 3 of them were crafted from trees grown in the 18th or 19th century, which aligns with the arrival of Europeans. However, one of them is older than the Europeans' first visit to the island. There are two reasons to believe that Rapa Nui people created this writing system themselves. First, Ronga works differently from European languages. Decoding it is a pretty hard task. Unlike English, this language boasts over 400 unique glyphs, none of which resemble any known writing system. There were many attempts to decipher this language, and none of them were successful so far. And second, one of the tablets is shown to be from around the 15th century, before the Europeans arrived. The problem is that radiocarbon dating can only tell us when the wood the tablet was made from was cut down, not when the writing was put on it. And since we've only got one tablet to go by, this isn't enough to be completely sure. On the other hand, why and where would they preserve cut wood for over 200 years just to grab it and write something on it one day? But anthropologists and historians say that it's possible. Scarce wood resources might have led the islanders to reuse old driftwood, which could be centuries older than the writing itself. This is known as the old wood problem in archaeology. Plus, the tablet looks very preserved. It was maintained to protect it from wood-damaging insects, humidity, and so on. That's why it survived over the centuries. Whatever is written on it, it was probably important for the Rapa Nui people. Now, all of these are guesses and clues, but scientists are cautiously optimistic. They believe that Ronga could be one of the rare instances of independent writing invention, like those of the Sumerians or the Egyptians. But we need more evidence. In the Rapa Nui language, rogo means to recite or to declaim. Not everyone could write, only a select few. Probably only the elite of Easter Island, mostly men, knew and could read this written language. After colonization, none of them survived. So now we have to rack our brains trying to figure out what's written here. First, scholars can't agree on what type of script it is. We aren't even sure that this was their language. But even if it was, we don't know whether it's a primitive form of writing or a fully developed system. In the 1990s, a linguist, Stephen Roger Fisher, believed he might have cracked the code of Ronga structure. His idea was that these tablets conveyed cosmogonies. Cosmogonies are stories or narratives that explain how the universe was created and how natural phenomena came to be. They often come from ancient traditions and cultures, like those found in East Polynesia. The tablets could have talked about things like how the world began, where everything came from, and how different aspects of nature, like the stars or the mountains, were formed. This would also explain why only the wise elite could write. Fisher thought that Ronga is a mix of logographic and semasiographic systems, which means that some symbols represent spoken words, while others represent ideas or concepts. But deciphering them would be very hard because it requires extensive memory and knowing context, because the symbols are more like hints than complete expressions. However, other language experts disagreed with his ideas, saying there were problems with how he put together his theory. Unfortunately, Fisher couldn't prove this hypothesis. Maybe these are just drawings. If we look at the tablets, there are some things that look recognizable: people, animals, plants, and geometric shapes. There are some birds. One of them looks like a frigate bird, which Rapa Nui people associate with the deity Maki Maki. There are also fish, centipedes, and so on, or at least these glyphs look like them. Could it be just art or a form of decoration? Maybe, but there are some problems. The glyphs show a high degree of complexity and structure. They also keep the same style. For example, there are several symbols that show something human-like with a raised hand. The only difference is different heads. As if it wasn't complicated enough, this unique writing style also uses a system known as reverse boustrophodon. This means that each alternate line is flipped upside down, resembling nothing seen elsewhere. We don't know why they would turn the tablet upside down after each line. But all this shows that they had some sort of system and organization behind these symbols. Plus, it seems like they use these tablets every day for some practical purpose. But there's some hope for the future. New technology, like AI and other computer programs, might help us understand lost languages. We already started creating algorithms that could help us solve other mysteries, like the Voynich manuscript. Academics even organized the Vesuvius Challenge. a machine learning competition that, in 2023, cracked the riddle of the ancient Herculaneum scrolls. The scrolls were buried under volcanic mud after the catastrophic eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. In real life, the scrolls are very fragile, so deciphering them would be a very hard task. But with digital scanning and machine learning, it's much easier. They have a rich history. They most likely belong to the personal library of an Epicurean philosopher named Philodemus. These scrolls contain very important insights into Greek philosophy and Latin literature. If we decipher more of them, we'll learn more about the rich history of the Roman Empire. If all the volcanoes on Earth suddenly erupted together, it'd be loud. We'd also have around 1,500 of these formations bursting at once. Now normally it's just 10 to 20 volcanoes that are active each day. But what would the world look like if they all blew their tops simultaneously? Geologists think it wouldn't be pretty. Even if only the land volcanoes erupted together, it would set off a chain reaction way worse than anything we've ever seen before. The two big problems would be ash and volcanic gases. While the explosions in lava would be damaging for people nearby, the real danger lies in what happens next. A thick layer of ash would cover the planet, blocking out sunlight completely. No sunlight means no photosynthesis, which means crops would fade away and temperatures would drop considerably. And all this ash cloud could remain in our atmosphere for up to 10 years. Now, ash aside, there's also acid rain to worry about. Volcanic gases like hydrochloric acid and sulfur dioxide would mix with the atmosphere and fall back down as acid rain. This type of weather would harm the groundwater and ocean surfaces. Even if humans would find a way to survive up to this point, we'd have no corals and no other sea creatures around. Scientists have seen similar events in Earth's history at a smaller scale. Big volcanic eruptions have been linked to mass extinctions. When Mount Pinatubo erupted in 1991, it cooled parts of the world for 2 years. But the extra carbon dioxide from these eruptions could also heat the planet, the same way we turn our stoves to broil for that extra crispy layer on our casserole. Geologists also mentioned that there's evidence in our atmosphere that stuff like this may have happened in the distant past. During the Cretaceous period, carbon dioxide levels were way higher than today, which made it difficult for marine life to thrive. Who would survive all this? Probably just some extremophiles, these organisms that survive in harsh conditions like hot springs or deep undersea vents. As for humans, we could all lay low in underground bunkers until things clear up, or build multiple space stations that could fit us all. Yeah, right. The chances of all volcanoes erupting at once, though, are very slim. Whew! That's because there isn't one giant source supplying all the volcanoes on Earth. Each one of these openings has its own deposit of magma, except for a few cases where they indeed share the supply. For example, in 1912, Nova Rupta in Alaska erupted alongside another volcano sharing magma. Scientists have also found evidence of magma hiding under volcanic areas, like under the Taupau volcanic zone in New Zealand. This magma can spread out horizontally for long distances, but is still just a local feature. Even if we consider all the magma under Taupau as one system, it's not connected to other volcanic areas like Indonesia or the Philippines. Because the great majority are isolated, volcanoes can't sync up to erupt at once. The magma comes from different processes like mantle decompression or adding water to the mantle through subduction. There's no way to make all these different volcanoes erupt together because of how tectonics work. Now, that doesn't mean we won't see interesting volcano activity in the future. Take an underwater area near British Columbia, where recently about 200 small earthquakes per hour have been noted. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean floor, off the coast of Vancouver Island, magma is set to erupt, heating the water so much that it'll bubble like soda. However, this event will likely go unnoticed by anyone other than scientists. The anticipated eruption will most likely happen around 3 miles below the ocean surface. Scientists explain that the earthquakes range from negative to 4.1 magnitude, meaning only those nearby would feel any tremors. This unusual activity gives us a rare opportunity to study how the Earth's crust forms. The magma beneath the ocean floor is estimated to be almost 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, but will cool rapidly upon eruption and contact with water. This runny rock will solidify upon contact with the seafloor, turning black quickly. This event will be useful for biologists too, who will have the opportunity to study the marine animals' response to any changes, like run! Antarctica, often seen as a vast icy continent, also holds a volcanic surprise beneath its frozen surface. Researchers have identified over 130 under the western ice sheet alone, making it the largest volcanic region on Earth. Most of these volcanoes, about 90, were only recently discovered in 2017. But could any of these Antarctic volcanoes actually erupt? Well, it depends on which volcano we're talking about. While these formations are relatively young in geologic terms, it's hard for scientists to tell if they're still active or not. There are only two confirmed active volcanoes in Antarctica, Deception Island and Mount Erebus. The latter, standing tall as the highest peak on the continent, has been continuously erupting since at least 1972. It's known for emitting gas and steam, and sometimes even throwing out rocks in what are called strombolian eruptions. One of its most notable features is a persistent lava lake in its crater, a rare phenomenon due to specific conditions needed to keep the surface molten. For instance, it's fueled by a steady supply of magma from deep within the Earth's mantle. This continuous inflow of molten rock provides the material for the lava lake to exist. It also features low ambient temperatures. Despite its location in Antarctica, Erebus has relatively mild temperatures in its summit region because of the heat generated by the volcanic activity. This allows the lava lake to remain liquid rather than freezing over. Deception Island, another active volcano, last erupted in the 70s. While it's currently not showing signs of imminent eruption, it's being monitored closely for any concerning activity. Apart from these two being confirmed to be active, Antarctica is dotted with fumaroles, openings in the Earth's crust that release gases and vapors. Sometimes these fumaroles can create icy towers reaching heights of 10 feet. What we should focus on is maybe supervolcanoes. They're this type that has the potential to produce the most massive and destructive eruptions. Unlike the typical one, which has a single vent, supervolcanoes have a vast magma chamber beneath the surface, spanning tens or even hundreds of miles in diameter. Their eruptions can have catastrophic effects on the surrounding area and even impact global climate patterns because of the amounts of ash and gases they spill out into the atmosphere. One famous supervolcano is the Yellowstone one, which some say is gearing up for another eruption. It has the capacity to unleash a colossal eruption, spewing over 240 cubic miles of material. As much as we'd like to predict its behavior, volcanoes don't stick to a calendar. On the contrary, eruptions simply happen when there's enough magma beneath the surface. There also needs to be enough pressure for the magma to travel upwards. As far as we can measure, these conditions are not currently met at Yellowstone. Sure, many volcanoes operate on a cyclical pattern, but that doesn't mean Yellowstone is overdue. In fact, Yellowstone has had just 3 major eruptions over the past 2.1 million years. Also, the term supervolcano refers to the formation's size, not necessarily how fussy it is. Yellowstone's monitoring is extensive, tracking seismicity, ground deformation, thermal emissions, gas, water chemistry, and surface changes. Signs of an eruption would include thousands of earthquakes over a short period. We'd also see deformation on the ground and weird gas emissions ahead of time. Stable as it might look like for now, the consequences of it having a major eruption could look ugly. Ash dispersion could blanket a 500-mile radius, potentially disrupting Midwest agriculture and clogging waterways. Ash and gas emissions into the stratosphere could induce global climatic effects, making our planet colder for several years. And yes, we've seen some research that it shows there's more liquid molten rock under the Yellowstone volcano than scientists believe. But that doesn't translate to imminent danger. In 2017, a strange object was spotted in our solar system. It had the shape of a long tube, similar to a pancake. No known asteroid or comet we've seen looks like that. Its exterior was also peculiar. It was at least 10 times more reflective than the average stuff that flies through space, with some saying it had a surface similar to polished metal. When it went past the sun and left our reach, it accelerated faster than what our gravity could account for. At first glance, it was like this thing had a rocket strapped to its back. This unusual visitor even got a special name, Oumuamua. It comes from Hawaiian and translates to scout or visitor from a faraway land. And because of its characteristics, scientists soon began to wonder if this was at last a visit from otherworldly creatures. Before they went full-on with the science fiction suppositions, astronomers gathered the information they were sure about, starting with the fact that Oumuamua must have come from another solar system. There must have been some unfortunate event in its home system that led to its ejection. What they didn't know was that this was a comet or asteroid. They're both celestial objects orbiting a sun, but they have distinct compositions and behaviors. Comets are composed primarily of ice, dust, and rocky material, often referred to as dirty snowballs. When a comet approaches the sun, the heat causes the ice to vaporize, releasing gas and dust particles into space. This creates a bright glowing tail that can extend for millions of miles. Comets generally have elliptical orbits, often taking them from the distant reaches of our solar system closer to the sun. Asteroids, however, are mostly made of rock and metal. In our neighborhood, they are remnants of the early formation of the solar system and are typically found in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Unlike comets, asteroids do not develop tails when they approach the sun, as they have no ice. Their orbits generally follow more circular paths compared to comets. By all accounts, Oumuamua should be a comet, because it seems to come from a different location in the universe. Yet, it doesn't exhibit the typical signs of cometary activity. Oumuamua lacks a tail and does not spew out gas as it passes by, not like me. Even though it behaves like a comet, it looks more like an asteroid. Now, another big question is how scientists even managed to spot Oumuamua in the first place. Considering the vastness of space and time in the galaxy, it's remarkable. Stars have lifetimes spanning millions or billions of years, and the formation of a solar system takes hundreds of millions of years. Even the fastest objects take tens of thousands of years to travel from one star to another. In contrast, humans have only been observing the skies with telescopes for around 400 years, a tiny fraction of cosmic time. And it's only in recent decades, even years, that we've had the technology to detect and track fast-moving, dim objects. Either rocks like these are abundant, or we've been incredibly lucky with our detections, or it's simply wanted to be seen. Now, another question that was asked was where such objects could come from. It's highly unlikely that Oumuamua came from a mature, stable solar system. That's because such systems don't eject enough material to fill up the galaxy. Occasionally, a random rock might get flung out, but it can rarely travel so far. Young systems, however, act differently. In these chaotic environments, collisions, mergers, and migrations are happening everywhere. Plenty of tiny rocks roam around, perfect candidates for ejection. The solar system that kicked Oumuamua out must have had a planet similar to Jupiter. Its massive size and gravity could influence other objects in the system, causing potential ejections. But not all solar systems develop Jupiter-sized planets. Often massive planets end up close to their stars, becoming hotter versions of Jupiter. These planets, snugly orbiting a sun, are less likely to eject debris. Now, Neptune-like planets may play a role too. While not as massive as Jupiter, they tend to call the outer regions of solar systems their home. Our solar system has the Kuiper Belt, a reservoir of comets in its outer reaches. During a solar system's early stages, interactions between Neptune-like planets and debris are common. Finding Neptune-like planets in other systems has been challenging, though. Our methods for detecting exoplanets work better for massive objects close to their stars, making it difficult to spot Neptune counterparts farther out. Oumuamua was also linked to a peculiar theory about how life came to be in the universe – panspermia. Now that's a hypothesis that suggests that life exists throughout the universe and can be distributed between planets by various means, such as asteroids, comets, or even spacecraft. It says that life must have originated in one location in the universe and then spread to other celestial bodies. Fans of the panspermia theory have suggested that such interstellar objects could potentially carry tiny microbes, those building blocks of life between star systems. If such objects were to impact a planet or a moon, they could transfer these materials and seed the celestial body with life. For now, there is no evidence to support the theory that this comet in particular has transported life between star systems. After years of research, the overall consensus became that Oumuamua was indeed a comet. The reason why it moves so strangely is because it might have frozen hydrogen on its surface that reacts when touched by sunlight. The closer it got to our Sun, the faster it became, releasing that hydrogen and also changing its path through our solar system. Its color also supports this theory. It's red, which might mean it's been hit by cosmic rays for a long time. The longer it was touched by those rays, the more hydrogen it gathered in the process. But since they can't be completely sure, astronomers have a plan to follow this visitor. One idea is to send a mission to check it out. It's already far away from us, but it may not be too late just yet. We may be able to send a probe fast enough to catch up with the comet. The plan was named Project Lyra and aims to use the Earth's orbit and that of Jupiter to bounce out a probe far enough to reach Oumuamua. If it works, it will be the fastest space device we've sent out in the universe. One potential trajectory of the space probe involves the gravitational pull of our planet and that of Jupiter as a lasso effect, but not Ted Lasso. The probe will leave our planet and re-enter Earth's orbit before sending it to meet with Jupiter's pull. It will be sent back near our planet a second time, where it will be ejected with enough force to reach the comet. Project Lyra also aims to follow a second faraway visitor named Borisov. This one was discovered by an amateur astronomer and now bears his name. What's interesting about it is that it's, well, spotless. Similar to our experience with Oumuamua, we haven't seen anything like Borisov before either. Studies of the light coming from its cloud of dust and gas show it's very clean compared to other space objects. After it was first noticed in August 2019, astronomers studied its path through our solar system and concluded it came from another star too. But Borisov gave us more time to study it because we spotted it earlier in its journey through our neighborhood. Researchers used advanced telescopes to look at the dust coming off Borisov. They found it's throwing off over 400 pounds of dust every second. They also found Borisov has more carbon monoxide than comets from our solar system usually do. But the amount isn't the same everywhere on the comet. This tells us the space object probably started forming near its home star before moving away, maybe because of larger planets in its system. The light from Borisov is way more polarized than light from other comets we've seen, and its cloud is super smooth. This tells us Borisov has never interacted with another star. You're one of over 8 billion people alive on Earth. Let's zoom out. Our planet is just one of 8 planets in our solar system. In the galaxy, our neighborhood is just one of almost 4,000. And from what we know so far, there are billions of galaxies in the entire universe. That itself may also be growing. It's highly unlikely that we're the only living creatures in the universe. Surely, there must be some other habitable planet. Here's where the Fermi Paradox comes in. The idea got its name from a man named Enrico Fermi. Back in the 50s, he pointed out that if other life forms were out there and had the tech to travel through space, they should have visited us by now. These days, we have better telescopes that allow scientists to discover over 5,000 planets outside our solar system. Yet, still no sign of life. Throughout the years, there have been many suggested solutions to the Fermi Paradox. These outer-world beings may be just too far away for a friendly chat. We've seen it in movies. spaceships traveling between stars as easily as cars on a highway. But in reality, making a way through space is a slow and cumbersome process. Even our fastest rocket would take thousands of years to reach a nearby star. When you add in the vastness of the cosmos, it's like trying to find a living needle in the biggest cosmic haystack available. Now, we could just as easily be the very first civilization to emerge in the universe. It's a lonely thought, and it also puts a lot of pressure on us. If we're the only ones, we need to preserve life on our planet, not just for our sake, but also because if we fade away, all life fades away with us. The universe has been around for billions of years, but intelligent life like ours has only existed for a tiny fraction of that time. Maybe we're just early bloomers, waiting for someone else to catch up. To support this theory, a study was done in 2015 using the Hubble Space Telescope. And this is what it showed. Out of all the worlds that could sustain life, only 8% are as old as the Earth. The rest of them are too young and still haven't reached that point in their evolution for life to thrive. There could also be the possibility that our galactic relatives are watching us from afar. A scientist from another planet may be studying us as primitive life forms right now. He may not want to disturb us just yet. The same way we look at ants in an ant farm during science class. On that same note, maybe they're just not ready to interact with us because they've calculated a precise, perfect timing for our meetup. So they're lying dormant in a hibernation status. And they might be right to do so. Why rush into things when we've got all of eternity ahead? There's also the idea that our planet and us humans just aren't cool enough for others to play with, and won't be until we're evolved enough to be welcomed into the Galactic High School's senior class. Or perhaps life is more fragile than we believe. A 2016 study suggested that it's in the early years of a planet where life makes its way. That's when the planet is cool enough for water to form. But those conditions may not last long thanks to the greenhouse effect. So even if life has existed in the universe every now and then, it never evolved to a stage where it could have contacted us. And what if life's ultimate test comes much later? Several thinkers believe that civilizations tend to destroy themselves at some point in their technological evolution. And this may be a potential future for us, too. We're just not there yet. Maybe we'll come to build technology so smart and so powerful that it will overwhelm us, leading to our demise. Well, if it can happen to us, who's to say it didn't happen to other species in the past on other planets? Amidst all these theories, there's one possibility that's both sobering and profound. We may truly be alone in the universe, forever. Perhaps the conditions for life are so rare that Earth is the only oasis in a vast desert of emptiness. The creepiest answer to the Fermi Paradox has a name, though, and it's called the dark forest theory. It first appeared in the 1980s. According to it, the universe is a huge version of a haunted forest, and other types of creatures are out there playing a game of hide-and-seek. It's the expanded version of the survival of the fittest. History on Earth shows that less technologically advanced groups usually end up worse off when meeting more advanced ones. The huge differences in technology often lead to a situation where attacking first seems like the best option. If there's even a small chance that cosmic neighbors might harm us, destroying them first could be our only hope. So if the galaxy is full of advanced life, it's smart for us to stay quiet and avoid contact. Other civilizations would probably reach the same conclusion. Even peaceful ones might feel forced to attack to survive. That's why some scientists criticize the idea of sending messages out there and think searching for them might be pointless. But this idea isn't new. A story from the 40s called First Contact describes humans meeting other types of civilizations for the first time. The two groups became friends, but can't risk letting each other find their home planets. They'd rather destroy each other than risk their safety. Another story, The Forge of God, talks about the danger of our signals reaching hostile species. It compares Earth's broadcasts to a baby's cries attracting wolves. It suggests that we might be in danger because of our naivete. The dark force theory was also explored in a radio play called Calls from Far Away. It shows how discovering otherworldly life on Pluto changes people's views. Some claim the news is fake, others try to understand the reality that we're not alone. But it also suggests that maybe we should focus on our own problems instead of reaching for the stars. If that doesn't sound scary, this will. We've been sending signals of our existence into the cosmos for decades now. By now, any potential civilization within 100 light-years of us might be getting our signals, and if they're advanced enough, they'll know exactly where to find us. If there's any reason why we need to hide from them, it's already too late. Galactic cousins aside, we do need to continue our research for habitable planets for a more pressing reason. Our cozy Earth won't be here forever. When our star fades, all life within the solar system will fade with it. Current estimations claim we've got about 1.3 billion years left before our planet becomes uninhabitable. It will become too hot for water to exist, and without water there is no life, at least not as we know it. So, it begs the following questions. What if there are other types of creatures out there that don't need water to exist? Our type of life needs water because it acts as a solvent. It's an environment where various chemicals can interact with each other to generate something that lives. Some new piece of research suggests that there may be a substitute for water out there in the universe – carbon dioxide. At certain temperatures and under a certain amount of pressure, it acts the same way, allowing chemicals to mingle. If that's true, then our list of known habitable planets would increase dramatically. Sure, we humans will probably never be able to survive on their surface, but other creatures may have evolved to do so. One planet that may feature these weird life conditions is closer than we think – Venus. Its atmosphere is made out of 97% carbon dioxide. It's also very hot and has enough pressure to sustain this theoretical model.
The world's largest fence spans over 3,100 miles from Queensland to South Australia. If stretched out, it could easily connect London to New York. And if you'd walk next to it, you'd need 6 months to complete the journey. It wasn't built to safeguard the Australian border. Why would it, since Aussies are just surrounded by water? It wasn't meant to protect some important building either. Its purpose is to keep some animal species away from each other. It was back in the late 1800s when Australians started building parts of this fence. They wanted to create a barrier separating the lively, bustling part of the country where cities like Melbourne and Sydney thrive from the harsh, dry outback. They used wooden posts dug deep into the ground, linked up with wire mesh standing about 6 feet tall. Some parts of the fence even have a second electrically charged layer. To make sure this fence did its job, they added some red and white lights to help guard things even at night. A team of over 20 people work full-time to keep things in check here. And every year, local authorities chip in around $750,000 to keep the construction in shape. Why all this trouble? The main reason was dingoes. These gingery, wolf-like creatures are Australia's largest carnivore mammals, and they're also apex predators. They were causing a lot of trouble to local farmers, especially in southern Queensland, where they often go after sheep. For the most part, the fence has been doing its job okay, but it's not foolproof. Some dingoes still manage to sneak through. Other times, wild camels end up crashing into it. That's because Australia has quite a massive camel population roaming around. But this man-made solution did more than locals expected. They thought there would just be fewer dingoes within the fence, but fewer dingoes mean more kangaroos. And more kangaroos mean more competition with the sheep for food. It's not just the bigger species feeling the squeeze. The smaller animals and the greenery also went through changes. With all this competition in a smaller space, locals noticed less diversity in the plant life and small animals. The soil became less nutritious over time, affecting plant growth. Plus, the fence acts as a roadblock for animal migration and seed dispersal. Even the sand dunes are feeling the effects, with less grass cover to hold things together. When scientists looked at kangaroos on both sides of the fence, they noticed that the young pups inside were lighter and tinier on average. The outsiders had bigger feet and heads for their age, and it wasn't because they were eating a different diet. The kangaroos that were stuck sharing the land with dingoes had to bulk up faster to survive. On the flip side, those inside the fence took it slower because they weren't under the same type of pressure. These had to compete with a lot of other creatures for food, so a bigger size wasn't a priority anymore. Researchers are still not sure if this difference is a quick fix or a long-term gene adaptation. What about domesticating dingoes? Wouldn't that help? Many think dingoes were once pets in Australia, but it's not known for sure. These days, they're pretty wild, just like wolves, hyenas, or coyotes. Most of them don't need packs to survive and are solitary hunters with sharp instincts built in. So taming them isn't going to be easy. Still, taking down the construction is not an option for now. Australians are so strict when it comes to making sure dingoes are kept away that they even put laws in place for people who mess up with the fence. Leaving a crossing gate open can put people behind bars for up to 3 months. Damaging the fence can cost people 6 months' worth of their freedom. It wasn't the first time Australians thought a fence could help with animal issues. Before they needed it for dingoes, they experienced a serious bunny invasion. Cute as they are, rabbits were damaging the land used for farming, so locals thought of a 3-part fence. The first one stretched all the way from Ravensthorpe in the south to Pardue Station on the Pilbara coast. It was over 1,100 miles long, making it the longest unbroken fence globally at the time. All these bunny problems could have been traced back to a man named Thomas Austin. Back in 1859, when he first came to the land down under, he thought it would be a good idea to release a few rabbits into the wild, thinking it would add a bit of charm to the place. But since rabbits aren't native to Australia, they didn't have any natural predators at the time. They're also pretty adaptive creatures, needing just some grass for feeding. They reproduce at astonishing speeds too. A mama rabbit can have 4 litters a year, with as many as 5 bunnies each. Pretty soon, their numbers boomed. By the late 1880s, the bunnies had caused so much damage that local authorities came up with a proposal. They'd offer the equivalent of almost $2 million today to anyone who could come up with a solution to this long-eared problem. Nobody claimed the prize, but a commission did gather a bit over a decade later and came up with the fence idea. Maintaining those fences was complicated. They had inspectors keeping an eye, with each one responsible for a stretch about 500 miles long. There were also these boundary riders patrolling smaller sections, using bikes at first, then switching to camels or using camels to haul buggies. They even tried using cars at one point, but they couldn't handle the rough terrain and constantly had punctured tires. In terms of its effectiveness, well, by 1902, rabbits were already hanging out on the wrong side of the fence. That's why, 4 years later, they put up another one. It worked for a while, so much so that the local authorities didn't bother helping out farmers past that second fence with rabbit netting loans. Those caught between the 2 fences, however, still had a rough time dealing with rabbit trouble. Soon enough, rabbits spread even over fence number 2, and it was clear the solution didn't work. In some areas, even while the fences were being built, those sneaky bunnies found their way past them. To this day, the rabbit population still sometimes puts the Australian officials through rough times. The dingo fence may be the longest one, but it's not the weirdest. The aquarium fence in Turkey might take that prize. This 164-foot aquarium fence was built to make sure the expensive villa's ocean view would be visible from every one of its levels. These days, it gathers a lot of tourists from all over the world, eager to see the variety of fish it contains, and even the octopuses. Putting up a see-through structure wasn't hard. The real challenge was connecting the aqua fence to the Aegean Sea through a buried pipeline stretching across 13,000 feet of land. This ensures water constantly flows, keeping the aquarium clean and the fish happy. To make sure no one damages the delicate fence or steals any of the fish or 2, the owner also invested in security. He installed a network of 17 cameras equipped with facial recognition. Visitors are free to look and take pictures, but step too close and you're likely to trigger alarms. Another one of those weird fences is New Zealand's bra fence. If you ever find yourself through central Otago, you might stumble upon a fence adorned with bras of all kinds of shapes, sizes, and patterns. Its story takes us back to 1999, when people in the area found 4 bras mysteriously hanging on the fence near Cardrona Valley Road. Some were a bit surprised, but then others started adding their bras to the decor. Some more bras appeared and it became a must-see spot for tourists. Its popularity was so high that at times it caused traffic problems in the area.
If an asteroid like Apophis hits Earth, we will be destroyed. Massive earthquakes will strike, and tsunamis will flood everything. Apophis is a billion-year-old celestial body that has been in the solar system since its inception. So you might be thinking, well, how likely is it that this giant space stone will collide with our planet in 2029? Well, let's find out, shall we? Apophis is a big, bad asteroid discovered in 2004 by the Kitt Peak National Observatory in Arizona. Since then, it has proudly held the title of one of the most dangerous asteroids ever located. It's around 1,100 feet wide, which is a bit bigger than the Empire State Building and the Eiffel Tower. Because of how scary it was named Apophis, like the Egyptian immortal creature that was considered to bring eternal darkness and destruction to Earth. Oh boy. In 2021, researchers had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study this floating rock when it passed near our planet, and we'll come back to that in a minute. Now, some scientists say that there is a small chance of Apophis hitting the Earth on Friday, April 13, 2029. The Yarkovsky effect is to blame for this, since it can slightly nudge this space rock towards Earth. This effect originates from the uneven emission of thermal photons from a rotating celestial object, resulting in a fascinating force exerted upon it in space. These emitted photons possess momentum and play a pivotal role in shaping the dynamics of the body. The asteroid has 2 sides, light and dark, just like the Moon. The light side faces the Sun and is warmer than the dark side. But the thing also turns, so the sides constantly change direction and temperature. This change could be detrimental because it slightly pushes Apophis toward Earth. Unfortunately, nobody knows how the Yarkovsky effect will influence the asteroid's path. On the other hand, on the asteroid's last flyby of Earth in 2021, astronomers used radar to take accurate measurements of its trajectory and confidently concluded Apophis will safely miss Earth in 2029 by about 20,000 miles and won't bother us again for at least 100 years. Now, generally speaking, every 8,000 years, our planet is hit by a falling star that has similar dimensions to those of Apophis. The last time we were hit by a slightly smaller meteor was in 2013. A new spacecraft developed by NASA called the OSIRIS-REx was launched in 2016 to collect samples from another slightly less terrifying celestial body called Bennu. 4 years later, it finally arrived at the thing, got some samples, quickly said goodbye to Bennu, and started traveling back towards Earth. The samples were safely stored in a capsule dropped in Utah. So far, this has been the most significant sample ever taken from an asteroid. After the delivery, the spacecraft didn't waste any time and started chasing Apophis. Now, OSIRIS-REx has been renamed to OSIRIS-APEX, and is currently playing tag with Apophis. With some luck, on the 2nd of April 2029, when the asteroid zips close by Earth, the spacecraft will reach Apophis and land on it. It will stay on Apophis for 18 months, collecting valuable information and taking thousands of pictures. The asteroid will be monitored with the help of powerful telescopes. At some point, Apophis will get too close to the Sun, and then all the monitoring work will be on OSIRIS's apex back. If you live in Europe, West Asia, or Africa, you're one of those lucky people who will have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see Apophis with the unaided eye. It'll be visible in the sky in these regions in 2029, and those who have telescopes will be able to spot it once again in 2036. OSIRIS-APEX will experience some problems because the asteroid has a thick crust, and the spacecraft won't be able to collect data as easily as it did with Bennu. OSIRIS-APEX has a unique thruster that will blow all the dust from Apophis while landing. This will be a perfect chance to analyze the surface of the asteroid to see what it's made of. The craft will spend 1.5 years mapping the asteroid, trying to detect changes in its shape. All this research will show how the celestial body is likely to move so we can better design plans to protect Earth from such things. In 2025, NASA is also going to launch the mission Apophis Pathfinder, and it will be the first spaceship to ever touch this asteroid. It will land approximately a year after its launch. Also, NASA has proposed sending a swarm of tiny craft into space to help humanity develop effective protective tactics against asteroid strikes. We know that Apophis originated in the primary asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. In the past million years, this celestial body has changed its path because of the considerable influence of Jupiter's gravitation. Now it seems like it favors the Sun more, meaning this asteroid will come very close to Earth. That's why it's classified as a near-Earth celestial body. A lot of tests and research have been done to find a way to deal with asteroids. Some solutions include drilling and detonating the space body from inside, or testing new technologies, like attaching rockets to it and trying to steer it away from Earth. We can also hit it with something moving at high speeds to make it change its course. Apophis is an S-type asteroid made of rocks and minerals like iron and nickel, and is shaped like a peanut. It can tell us a lot about the past and possibly the future. Sampling this space object could reveal how life on Earth began and how plants appeared. There are many theories that suggest that water arrived on our planet on an asteroid or a comet. Asteroids are like priceless time capsules. Unlike rocks on Earth, which have undergone thousands of changes, like erosion, most celestial bodies are still intact and much easier to study. When meteors fall on Earth, they get covered in debris that's impossible to clean. That's why studying Apophis while it's still in space is so important. Also, some asteroids are made of precious metals like platinum. Right now, we have a high demand for metals that we use in production, and mining metals on Earth is quite tricky. Just one large meteor might have iron, nickel, gold, and platinum that could last us millions of years. If Apophis has this amount of metals, well, we'd want to break it down and bring it back to Earth. One space rock could be worth quadrillions of dollars, making space mining highly profitable. And still, it would cost us more to get it back to Earth than to dig up these materials here. As technology progresses and new kinds of rockets are developed, this might become possible at some point. So, even though we're safe for the next 100 years from Apophis, you probably still want to see what would happen if something like it did impact. Come on, sure you do. Well, first let me tell you, you'll hear the sound of the collision and know what's happened even if you're miles away. You should leave your house or apartment immediately. Shortly after the impact, massive earthquakes will strike, and many tall buildings will fall. So, staying away from cities might be your best option if you have a choice. But don't escape by car. There will be massive traffic jams, and everyone will panic. Going on foot or by bike is your best option in this scenario. A prime way of transportation will be traveling by plane, so if you've always wanted to get that pilot license, now you've got a good excuse. If you have time, take along extra snacks and water, and an extra pair of socks. It's nice to live by the ocean or the sea, but in this scenario, it's the worst place to be, because giant tsunami waves will hit coastlines after the impact. If you live far away from the impact area, the tsunami might take 30 hours to arrive. You'll have a bit of time to prepare. There are probably 36 other civilizations hanging out in the Milky Way. and over 170 billion galaxies, give or take, in the observable universe. Conditions for life are all over space. So, where is everybody? Nuclear physicist Enrico Fermi came up with this exact same question during a lunch break with his colleagues in 1950, leading to one of the most unsettling paradoxes in the universe. Even though there's a huge probability of extraterrestrial civilizations existing, we still haven't found any clear evidence of them. One possible explanation comes from the zoo hypothesis. It suggests that advanced extraterrestrial societies exist and know exactly who we are and where we are, but intentionally choose to stay hidden. They're just observing human quirky behaviors, as if we're in some kind of a cosmic wildlife park. But their intentions could be much darker. If you're a Star Trek fan, you probably remember the main rule for Federation members. Starfleet officers shouldn't contact species that are not advanced to avoid messing with their development, even if it means risking their own lives. Now, even though it's fiction, this rule perfectly captures what the zoo hypothesis is all about. Beings from other corners of the universe see our planet as a cosmic zoo with one-way bars. They can watch us brushing our teeth in the morning or walking our dog, but we can't catch a glimpse of them. In this theory, non-terrestrial life forms deliberately keep their distance from us, sticking to a hands-off policy agreement in the vast cosmic neighborhood. It's like those super smart beings agreed that we needed to have the freedom to shape our own future and destiny, following our own path of development without external contamination. The idea is that these super advanced civilizations could be like, 500 million years ahead of us, which would explain why we haven't seen any signs of them. And maybe it's better this way, as humans could eventually be destroyed or even assimilated by this new cosmic power, Independence Day style. As much as things like going to an art museum might be interesting to us, extraterrestrials probably wouldn't be too thrilled watching us stare at the Mona Lisa painting for hours. Interplanetary cultures might be more into buying tickets to quietly observe how we're developing new technologies, such as ultra-modern satellites. According to the zoo theory, they can't reach out to us until we hit a certain level of development, so improving our technology and wisdom could be the only way to show them that we're mature enough and don't need their spaceship parenting anymore. There are a couple of reasons why it's hard to buy into the zoo hypothesis. Extraterrestrials might not visit or reach out because we're not all that advanced. But it is tough to explain why they keep ignoring all our attempts to communicate. Even if the zookeepers try their best not to interfere with animals' lives and behaviors. I bet they couldn't just ignore a bear speaking in loud and clear English about its desire to communicate. So that's pretty much why humans keep trying and trying to provoke some reaction from inhabitants of other planets using radio signals. In 2017, in a valley 8 miles southeast of the Norwegian city of Tromsø, a radar antenna transmitted some specially composed electronic music to potential intergalactic listeners. The target audience was in GJ273, also known as Lytton Star. It's a runty red dwarf located 12 light-years from our solar system. Since radio waves travel at the speed of light, we'll have to wait more than 2 decades before looking for a reply. But the main problem with radio waves is that we're kind of in the dark about where to look, and civilizations might be as far as 17,000 light-years away. Plus, we don't know which radio frequency extraterrestrials use to chat. Now here on Earth, we use the radio spectrum to send signals into the universe, assuming that what works for us might be a common method for other civilizations. But in fact, it could be considered a somewhat old-school technique for other beings. That's why current projects are now looking for technosignatures, which are signs of technological activity from extraterrestrials, like city lights, solar panels, megastructures, or artificial satellites. Another potential clue is to study the atmospheres of planets orbiting nearby stars, as an advanced civilization might be altering its atmosphere with different gases, making it detectable. Despite decades of observations, there is still no definitive evidence that advanced extraterrestrial civilizations are out there. But that doesn't mean they don't exist. Even by expanding search fields, we're talking about odds much slimmer than hitting the jackpot, with a roughly 1 in 3 billion chance of finding an advanced civilization within a given distance from Earth. Maybe space creatures are responding to our communication attempts, but in a way that we can't understand. The universe has been around for more than 13 billion years, while humans showed up just 200,000 years ago. And this is about 0.01% of the universe's age. It's like we're still learning to talk, while other super smart beings might be sending us messages that are all lost in translation. We keep waiting for a giant UFO to land on Earth and for green ETs with huge eyes to come out of it. But we forget that our intergalactic neighbors could be more interesting in building nanotechnologies to watch over us. They could also be trying to communicate using neutrinos, which are subatomic particles with an extremely small mass that could effortlessly pass through our planet without being detected by our current technological devices. Now, the zoo hypothesis has another issue. It is pretty tough to believe that, with all these civilizations supposedly hanging out in the universe, they would all decide not to reach out to humans. For this to happen, there would have to be a great sense of structure, with a higher intelligence working as the head of the universe, giving them direct orders and clear rules to keep us isolated. But we're talking about billions of possibilities for life, right? More civilizations mean that there are more chances of a violation of this no-contact rule. So, most likely, at least one independent planet would be just as desperate to find life in the universe as we are. Some scientists also believe that if such advanced life had substantially colonized Earth and many other planets, we would know it by now. The zoo hypothesis has two other variations that are even more frightening. In the laboratory hypothesis, nobody contacts us because humankind is actually being subjected to experiments, and Earth is essentially a giant science lab. Otherworldly creatures could be analyzing human responses to various survival challenges, such as tsunamis or massive earthquakes. In this case, the no-contact agreement between all other space groups would make a bit more sense, since it's in the name of scientific research for the greater good, at least for them. The planetarium hypothesis, proposed in 2001, suggests that we are living in an artificial universe, in some kind of virtual reality designed to give us the illusion that the universe is empty when it's not. But no possible generator could test this hypothesis. Besides the zoo, the laboratory, and the planetarium theories, there is another possible answer to the Fermi Paradox. Nobody contacts us because humans are completely alone in the universe. This is known as the rare Earth hypothesis, and it emphasizes how Earth occupies an incredibly unique position. No other planet could bring life to the universe that could be more than just bacteria. We may consider ourselves pretty lucky, as even a small change in any of Earth's orbital parameters, like the distance from the Earth to the Sun or the rate of rotation, could make conditions too extreme for people or life in general. But again, it's hard to think that we are alone in this vast universe. So, we're back to the paradox. Where is everybody? We still can't find the source of the mysterious signal we've been receiving since 2018. We receive it every 22 minutes, and nothing can explain this. Some scientists even believe it could be coming from another civilization we haven't met yet. This strange radio signal wasn't found by a scientist on a serious mission. It was actually discovered by a college student just doing a regular project for school. Tyrone O'Doherty, an undergrad student at Curtin University in Australia, was sifting through old data of the southern sky. He was looking for any weird blinking radio signals. He finally stumbled upon one from 2018 that seemed to shoot radio waves towards Earth like a lighthouse beam. Excited about his find, Tyrone shared it with his mentor, radio astronomer Natasha Hurley-Walker. She dove into researching this signal, hoping for a breakthrough. But despite checking different frequency data, they hit a dead end. But then, Natasha spotted a pattern. The signal repeated every 18 minutes. This was huge. But just as they were gearing up to study it further, poof! The signal vanished after only 3 months, leaving them with nothing. Not giving up, Natasha and her team scanned the skies again, desperate for a clue. Months passed, but nothing turned up. They were ready to give up, and then suddenly, a new signal popped up. This one kept blinking for 5 minutes, then it disappeared. And then it came back exactly 22 minutes later. The main question was if that signal was related to an 18-minute one. To figure it out, Natasha went back to the old radio data from that area. As they dug deeper, they realized that, yes, and these signals aren't anything new. They've been beaming towards Earth for 35 years. Back in 1988, Indian and American telescopes had caught them, but they got buried under tons of other data. This was great news for space explorers because it meant they could now calculate how far away this mysterious object was. After doing the math, they figured out it was incredibly far, even on a space scale, 15,000 light-years from Earth. Now, the only thing left to uncover was what exactly this object was. Walker and his team started comparing it to all the known radio-emitting objects out there. Yet its source remains a mystery. The signals still pop up every 22 minutes on NASA screens, always ending with a frustrating match not found message. The scientists called it J183910. Some think that the signal might come from some extraterrestrial beings. Maybe it's the signal that SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, has been waiting for. This project has been working for over 50 years, trying to find any evidence of life beyond Earth. They also scan the skies for radio waves, laser pulses, and other mysterious signals. So maybe it's a way for extraterrestrial folk to communicate their location. While that idea may sound exciting, we need to be careful about jumping to conclusions. First, we don't have solid proof for that. Before any concrete evidence, it's just speculation. And also, there are other more plausible explanations. Most likely it comes from a natural phenomenon, and there are a couple of theories for that. The first one is the pulsar theory. Imagine a huge star in space much bigger than our Sun. Sometimes these big stars finish their life journeys in a spectacular event called a supernova. When this happens, the star's core collapses, becoming super compact, as if you're squeezing all the stuff from that star into a tiny space. That tiny, super-dense core is called a neutron star. Some of these neutron stars are extra special. We call them pulsars. They get their name because they seem to pulse with energy, like a space lighthouse. These pulsars have incredibly strong magnetic fields, much stronger than what you'd find on Earth. They're like enormous magnets in space. Because of this, they shoot out beams of energy. They're also spinning super fast, so these beams of energy seem to pulse on and off as they spin around. Now, the strange signal we detected seems to have similarities with pulsars, but not quite. Pulsars usually have a predictable lifespan and slow down over time, eventually stopping their radio signals. In contrast, our mysterious signal is quite persistent and is blinking beyond what's expected for pulsars. So, maybe it's not a typical pulsar, or not a pulsar at all. There's also a magnetar theory. Now, a magnetar is another type of neutron star. They're like supercharged versions of pulsars, with even stronger magnetic fields and slightly longer pulsating periods. Maybe this is what causes our signal's intense persistence. However, when we plotted the data, we also realized the signal didn't match the magnetar's vibes either. Magnetars not only send out radio waves, but also powerful X-rays because they're so energetic. But the signal we received was only sending out radio waves. So we figured it's not a pulsar and not a magnetar. The signal's behavior is very strange and suggests an unnatural source. This means there might be something in the universe that scientists haven't fully explored yet. And there is a space object that we don't know much about. The final theory is the so-called dwarf pulsar. Sounds a little dopey to me. Couldn't help myself. Now, a dwarf pulsar is like a star that blinks with light flashes, similar to pulsars, but it takes longer for each blink. Usually, white dwarfs are the leftovers from smaller stars. They don't blink because their magnetic field isn't as strong as pulsars. But when a white dwarf becomes pretty hefty, almost the mass of our Sun, it gets super dense and starts pulsating with a strong magnetic field, just like pulsars. They have a cool quirk. White dwarfs are made of electrons, not neutrons like pulsars. When these charged electrons start dancing with a magnetic field, they shoot out periodic light flashes, which happen every 100 to 1,000 seconds. As you remember, our signal has a period of 22 minutes, 1,320 seconds, a bit longer than the usual white dwarf pulsars, but it's much closer to the truth. So far, this sounds like the most plausible explanation. But even this theory isn't fully confirmed yet. This just shows how much there is in the universe that we're still figuring out. For example, fast radio bursts, another mysterious type of signal we've been detecting. They're like quick, intense bursts of energy in the form of radio waves. They have a ton of energy. FRBs are so powerful that sometimes they can be brighter than entire galaxies. Now, imagine this. They release as much energy in a few milliseconds as our Sun does in 3 whole days. Wow! These bursts happen all over the sky with huge frequencies, although some have been detected with lower frequencies. Every day, we catch around 10,000 random FRBs in the sky. Some of them repeat, but most happen once and disappear forever. Unfortunately, most of them only last for a fraction of a second, and by the time their energy reaches us, it's 1,000 times weaker than a mobile phone signal from the moon. This is why, despite their brightness, there's still a lot we don't understand about them. We're still trying to figure out what causes these FRBs. They could be coming from different sources, like already mentioned magnetars, colliding stars, or even merging galaxies or white dwarfs. As these bursts travel through space, they pick up information about the cosmic environments they pass through, like interstellar gas clouds. It's very unlikely that FRBs are some messages from extraterrestrial beings, though. Not only because there are thousands of them every day all across the sky, but also because we know that the sources of these bursts must be incredibly energetic themselves. Our neighbors would have to have equipment stronger than entire galaxies for that. But the bottom line is, while all these signals are fascinating, there's still a ton to learn about them.